Alright, guys, so this is going to be my review of Volume 1 of The Swamp Thing, which is called Becoming. So, for those who don't know what Swamp Thing is, or rather this run of Swamp Thing, this is the Swamp Thing is basically a new introduction of Swamp Thing by a writer/artist named Ram V, who is also working for Marvel and DC. I have his first two volumes of Carnage as well, which we'll be digging into, because I think what I'm going to do is, because I have all three volumes of Swamp Thing right here. All three volumes of the Swamp Thing right on me. Yeah, this was meant to be apparently this was meant to be a 10-issue maxi series, but it was so good it got another 6 issues. So it was a 16-issue miniseries. You ever heard that before? A 16-issue maxi series? Have you ever heard that? No, I haven't. I sure as shit haven't. But this is a nice introduction. Ram V, artwork by Mike Perkins. So I'm going to be throughout a while. I'm going to be reviewing the issues of this series, because here's the thing: I've always wanted to read Swamp Thing. I've always wanted to read more Swamp Thing comics. He's always been a fascinating and intriguing character to me, and I know everyone says the Alan Moore run, and trust me, I'm aware it's one of those seminal DC comics and comics in general that you have to read, is the saga, Alan Moore's saga of Swamp Thing. But yeah, other than that, I want to read more than just Alan Moore. I mean, yeah, it's fucking Alan Moore, the Cthulhu wizard himself. But I wanted to find something that did more. I never got to read the Scott Snyder run, and the Charles Soule run, I understand, was meh. So it was a nice and also there's so much stuff that goes into Swamp Thing. So when Ram V came out with a new Swamp Thing comic and they were relaunching it with a new Swamp Thing, this is not Alec Holland, which I'll get into in a moment. It was yeah, this is kind of perfect. This is a nice, perfect book to check out. So let's talk about it. So this comic, like I said, is not Alec Holland. Alec Holland is gone. He is within the green now. And this new character is named Levi Kamei. Levi is a Indian-American-born scientist who, right now, we don't know a lot of the specifics of him becoming Swamp Thing. He's just been chosen to be the new avatar of the green and is now connected to Swamp Thing. And the first basically in this volume is the first 4 issues of the comic and the 2 issues of Swamp Thing Future State. So that's really where it is. So Swamp Thing, this version of Swamp Thing is still new. He's learning his powers, and it's also very body horror-esque. It's a very body horror kind of comic. It's a very visceral, much like Alan Moore's run, where there was a lot of body horror, but it wasn't shock value. It wasn't a straight up shock value book. It was more this is unpleasant, but it tells the story. Are you going to get a little grossed out by this book? Yeah. Also, what's fascinating is that the first 4 issues aren't really they do have an overarching story, but really it's basically issues 1 and 2 are its own story. Issues 3 and 4 continue it, but they have their own plot as well. So it's not a 4-part story. It's just, here's 2 issues, they tell a story, this is 3 and 4, it continues that story, but tells its own as well. It feels like their own little 2-part stories in and of itself. It's not part 1 of 4. So this is Mike Perkins' artwork. Mike Perkins is really good. No, I mean, yeah, it's a little hard to be you can't beat Bernie Wrightson. I'm sorry, you just can't beat Bernie Wrightson on Swamp Thing. But Mike Perkins is really damn good. I've seen some of his. I think he did Batman for a little bit, and he does great dark ink and saturated colors, and gives a very hot horror vibe, and that's what you need for Swamp Thing, is this kind of dark horror vibe. The character of Levi, he's not annoying. That's what I was afraid of. I was afraid Levi, this new Swamp Thing, was I don't want to be Swamp Thing. He's more I don't know what I am anymore. It's very much The Fly. It's very much like Jeff Goldblum's The Fly, where this is a guy who doesn't know what he's becoming, but he's slowly accepting what he is and what his role is. Well, maybe Jeff Goldblum's Fly is not the right term, but It is a scientist who was dabbling in something, and the Green chose him to take on this role. The first two issues are very much of him dealing with this thing called the Pale Stranger, which is not connected to the Rot. It might be, actually. I haven't read the other two volumes, so it might be connected to the Rot or something, or this other thing called the Parliament of Gears, which are playing a big role in the final arc. There's also, in the second part, we have him going into the Green alongside his love interest Jennifer, and essentially he runs into Ivy and the Floronic Man, as well as Alec Holland. So, yeah, we get all of that. It's really cool to see, like, the Floronic Man. He's getting pushed a lot. I'm surprised there isn't a lot of Anton Arcane anymore. I'm surprised, like, that's the thing, like, Scott Snyder really pushed Arcane because he was Swamp Thing's big villain, but recently they've been really pushing Floronic Man as the big villain for him, which I'm like, okay, I'm not saying the Floronic Man's bad, I'm just like, I kind of miss the body horror Arcane was capable of, but who knows, maybe Arcane will show up in the next two volumes. That's the thing, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm really excited. The Future State stories are really fun, also focuses on Swamp Thing and his effect in that timeline. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a brilliant story. I'm constantly hooked, already hooked on this. If you're looking for a new comic that isn't Alan Moore, if you've already read like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and want to read more Swamp Thing stories, here you go. The story's done. The 3 volumes are now done as of this. The last volume came out 2 weeks ago, Parliament of Gears. So the 3 volumes of Ram v Swamp Thing, the Swamp Thing, it's done. You can pick up all 3 volumes right now and go check it out. I highly recommend Volume 1. I am going to be reading Volume 2 soon, but I got some other books that I'm going to be reading, and like, rather than burn myself out on Swamp Thing, I'm just going to be like, Swamp Thing, other book, Swamp Thing, other book. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed this. If you've read The Swamp Thing, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse. Side note, before I actually sign off, I do remember Chris said he's sending me the trade of the Swamp Thing Black Label book by Jeff Lemire called Swamp Thing Green Hell. I can't wait to read that. Chris, thank you ahead of time for that one. But anyway, now for real. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.